What is codependent supply? How about that?
Oh, yeah.
The supply for codependents is scenarios that require fixing. So our supply is to be needed, is to be the one who is the rescuer. If you can recognize this as an addiction, and I encourage you to, look at where in your life you're acting like you're addicted to fixing things, just so that you can play out the rescue fantasy, and do see it as being the symmetrical comparative mirror image to narcissism. It's a really unhealthy thing. This is not how a healthy sovereign adult goes through life.
So that's a simple breakdown of the need to be needed. Is that the codependent hook? The need to be needed?
Yep.
Yeah, totally.
I think I've just become more sophisticated at it. It's like I see the people who are obvious with it, you know, and I'm like, oh, so obviously codependent. But I'm like, I think I'm just as codependent as I always was. I'm just more sophisticated about it to myself.
So you have other ways of getting your rescue fix, or
Yes. Yep.
savior fix?
Mm-hmm.
I've been catching it and I stop like midway. I'm catching myself and then I do a turnaround.
Now the challenge of pointing this out as a codependent might take this information and try to fix their tendency to fix.
Oh boy.
But yeah, we got to start somewhere.
That creates a feedback loop so you don't get out of it. So sometimes I do the opposite. So what's the upside of codependence? The addiction. We'll just cover it.
The addictive property of codependency, it works. It's not all bad.
How does it work?
You get to abrogate your responsibility to be an adult. You get to abrogate responsibility for the decisions made in your life. Like if I wind the clock back to when I was 36, from 36 to 30, 6 years, nothing that happened then was my fault.
6 years?
Nothing that happened then was my fault. My girlfriend was BPD, she had NPD, she was probably histrionic, she did this, she did that. Let me tell you, you've never heard a story like this. Let me tell you my story. Let me feed you my narrative. Great, 6 years, 6 good years.
What's the emotion?
Resentment.
What's the emotional?
Resentment.
Yeah.
Look, he has emotions now. It's not like post-therapy Grannon, who's a friggin' emotional flat, whatever he is now. He's a person here.
Young. I was young, fit, and intelligent. 6 good years.
He's appreciating his youth, while Nahama's like, oh, those kids are young. That's bad. But...
No, it's not bad. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
I was young.
No, he's upset that he wasted his own youth.
6 years of his youth. So as we get older, then we start really appreciating youth, and in that middle ground of not getting old and ancient, like some of the people in this room.
Okay, now so he's resentful, but
What?
he's not
Speak up. I can't hear
acknowledging.
you. What?
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
He's not acknowledging.
The fantasy.
Does anyone read his eyeballs? Do you see any emotions here?
And I don't think I've recovered. I still see myself responding codependently in situations, and I'm like, I have to look at myself and go, am I doing this out of civic duty? Is this my socialist sense of shared community justice, or is this? And I'm not 100% sure.
My codependent supply.
This sort of doubt, that was a new person, Tiffany, who was at the meeting. She was trying to get, oh, I stopped sending my mom money. Is that the right thing to do? And then I did the opposite, and I said, why would you stop sending your mom money? Getting free money is a good thing. What? Aren't you concerned about her getting free support? Then, like, after it's settled 10 minutes later, she's like asking the group, "What'd I do? Am I doing the wrong thing? What?" This sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha.
I'm not 100% sure.
That lack of certainty, that constant doubt, that's the double loop of the learning that I was trying to point out today. So they get stuck in loop number 1. How do I make sure I do the right thing? How do I control the results? How do I make sure I don't do something wrong? And they don't update the map. Because updating the map means you have to go into doubt. You have to go into cognitive dissonance. You
I
have to let go
literally
of that
dreamt
fantasy.
that last night.
That was implanted.
Yeah, thank you. It worked.
And we covered it in the meeting in person. So that was very interesting.
I'm still battling with it. So I'm not like, oh, the big guru says do this. I don't fucking know. It's a battle. It's an ongoing thing.
What you fight, you make stronger. So if you're just battling a fallen self with another fallen self, no matter who wins, you both lose. You're still in a codependent dance. This is a problem of doing too much fantasy, is that a narcissist can do this.
So a lot of times people don't understand how much a narcissist can actually disassociate reality from what's actually going on inside their head. So to give you an example, for a period of time they thought I had some type of a sex addiction. So they sent me away to...
Oh, this is a weird story, but try to catch it. So he went to a sex addiction retreat or something.
It was like a 3-day intensive sex addiction. And I came back from that all excited. And
so 3-day retreat, he came back excited. What does
Of course.
a narcissist do with his distorted reality, with his fantasy, not a shared fantasy, only his fantasy?
going through my mind, I'm coming back, and I'm like, I'm excited to be able to tell someone. So that's what I did. I came home, and I sat down with my wife, with my ex, and with my secret girlfriend at all the same table.
Brilliant.
All at the same table. He sat with his ex, wife, and secret girlfriend.
That's
Well, 'cause he
hilarious.
doesn't
After
have any
taking a
boundaries.
3-day retreat.
I
He
want
doesn't have boundaries.
to see what that invite looked like.
Oh my
It's
god.
not secret anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe he
People
didn't
know
tell the
how
rest
a
of
guy
them.
that
He
looks
said,
like
meet me
that
here.
could
And
get
then
free.
all 3 of them showed up. I don't know.
Well,
So
at
what
that
happens?
moment, it's not secret anymore.
What happens? What does he say
He's
happens?
excited because the retreat is an opportunity for him to like make a shared
Cleanse.
fantasy among all of them.
Yeah. His fantasy, he believed it. So he projected that, oh, if everyone joined, that's better. Because
Well, because he was doing a 9th step, but when you're doing a 9th step, you're not supposed to injure yourself or others. You're not supposed to injure anybody.
Oh, he wasn't doing any steps. He was just
Yeah,
doing this
true.
for shits and giggles.
yeah.
And told them about what I learned from sex addiction. And like that worked in my head. I don't even know how. But I was excited to come back and share the news that I learned with those 3 people in the same room.
Oh, gross.
Because if you...
Yeah, this is a big one that I've done and I've actually seen.
If you have fantasy just with yourself, you're disconnected from reality. And then you get this sort of constant memory destruction. Check this out.
Done, which is really crazy. It kind of like, whoa, like made me think about it as well, is where like someone can tell a lie and then rewrite it enough where they actually believe that lie 100%. And they're like, no, like I don't remember that happening at all. And you're just like, wait, like no, it totally happened. And you can have like 5 people be like, hey, this is exactly what just happened. And that person be like, okay, like why are you attacking me? Like I don't remember it that way. And
So 5 people disagree, and he says, oh, why are you guys attacking me? I'm not budging. That's what I remember, and fuck you, fuck reality. That's essentially what he's saying.
tries to like change the subject or turn it around so that the other people even feel stupid of like, well, why are we even bringing it up? Just
And you can gaslight the other people.
He's
That's
bringing
Get
up
this.
alternative
But yeah,
facts.
like I've definitely seen that
Yes.
where I've lied or twisted something so much, and then I start believing it, and I'm like, that didn't happen, and then I go straight into gaslighting. Like, are you crazy? Like, maybe you're just imagining it that way, but like this is how I remember it, and like I obviously remember it better than you do. That kind of thing.
He obviously remembers it better than you do because he just rewrote it. It's super fresh in his head. So, if you don't have a shared fantasy, then you have what he had. So, you think Richard Branson was promoting fantasy or shared fantasy? Confabulation. Anything else in here? Sound familiar? So Richard Branson is still codependent, and he only knows love as enmeshment. Oh, I was going with the angle of what's the positive side of being codependent. Instead of trying to fix the fix, why is the fix there? Why is it adaptive? How can we appreciate the qualities of codependence instead of trying to judge
Because it gets what we need. It gets us what we need.
Aha. So,
Which is
which is good question, Holly. Any
What do you
answer?
need?
Because we're manipulating to get our needs met. So not that
What's
we're
the
successful,
need?
not that we're successful. To be taken
There's
care of.
A need to be needed.
Yeah. Need for that person who we're giving to take care of us. But it doesn't usually work that way.
But do codependents accept being taken care of?
No.
Generally not, yeah.
So that
so
doesn't
you're
seem like a need.
right. You're not filling the need of being taken care of. You're filling
The need for
need
power. Need for power?
No.
I think it's the need to survive.
Yeah.
That's
different
maybe
strategies.
closer.
Fear of abandonment. Fear of
Need to
being,
not be left alone.
yeah.
Trying to get your mummy to love you through an adult relationship doesn't work.
Yeah. By being parentified.
You're trying to manipulate someone into loving you the way you didn't get as a child. So it's pure quid pro quo.
Yeah.
Except the other person
Transaction.
doesn't necessarily realize, initially at least, that that's what's going on.
Let's go with Ponkage's answer, because that's a better segue.
What did he say?
Survival.
From my perspective, that appeasement is not just doing or fulfilling the wills of the other, the will of the other. It's giving the other cues that you're on board. Cues that you're on board.
So what if you were to think your FAWN self is not just verbal, it's actually signals you're sending out to abusers?
So there is a duplicitous aspect to it, and not merely, you win, I'm now appeasing you. Appeasement comes out of a very resilient nervous system. And
So this is a nice spin. I like this spin that's saying that appeasement is a resilient nervous system. So a codependent is not fully traumatized. And that's what's coming out in the book group.
Right.
Because the first week she did like some Rorschach's test with the ink blots, and no one in the group had PTSD answers. I think Debbie missed that one. But I was at the first meeting, and there were the answers that you'd see, like the dead animals, or you'd see violent images. No one in the codependent group had any answers like that. So their trauma is not to the level where they can't create a FAWN self. Someone who had full PTSD, they lose the ability to create a false self. They either freeze, run, or just act out. So creating the victim identity, appeasing other people, that's a mid-level trauma. That's a level of resilience to be able to con the other person to try to make safety.
Wait.
Crystal.
Please, please for me, I think you're hitting on something for me right now. This mid-level trauma. Can you just repeat it one more time for me?
Okay. So a lot of times we equate codependence with CPTSD, complex trauma, and then we equate that with just trauma. But if somebody is able to consciously use intelligence to appease the abuser, that takes a lot of energy. That takes a lot of creativity. So you still have a lot of circuitry there. So it's a mid-level trauma, not a give-up trauma. You're still desperate, so it is still coming out of desperation. It's still coming out of a passive survival strategy. But you're actively playing the game as an appeaser. The spin is that if you're actively playing the game, instead of trying to fix your fixing, you can somehow take your fixing into something creative. You can turn the fixing into something else instead of just trying to say that's a bad behavior.
Like what, for example?
That's later if I get to part 3.
Okay. Okay.
Right now we're trying to set some consideration, some space to say, can I look at this differently?
Right.
Instead of using the codependent frame of fixing, of judgment, of resentment, of perfection.
Right. I found something that I wrote while I was in an abusive environment, like I don't know, probably about decade and a half ago. And it caught my eye because I'm going through everything. It caught my eye because the first 2 words are safe places. So I was looking at it, and it basically, the first 2 pages describe sort of what you were just saying, which I just essentially write out my strategy for getting through that moment. And it's exactly that. It's brilliant.
Yes. It's brilliant. So it's so brilliant the codependent has conned the codependent that you're weak. You're supposed to con the abuser that you're weak. But it's become so autopilot you lose the brilliance. You lose the recognition that it's a highly strategic strategy.
I was reading this the other day and my jaw just dropped open because I told a few people that I was going to go through old journals, and they were like, oh, prepare yourself. It's just going to be a bunch of stupid stuff. Like everyone's an idiot when they're that age. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, holy shit, this is fucking brilliant. Like I was so impressed because I felt like the person who had wrote that, my younger self, was like, not wiser, but in many ways wiser than I am now. Like I'm a little bit more dramatic now. And, I've definitely settled over the years into the whole victimhood thing. And holy fuck, I was not that at all. I was like, it's just brilliant. And it's, I don't know. I want to see if there's like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
If you guys don't mind, do you mind if I read some of it?
Yeah, go for it.
No, if you want to share,
Please do.
This is raw.
It's like 10 pages. I'm just going to look at the first 2, but I think I wrote this immediately after. No, I was still in the environment. And I was taking care of premature babies who were not mine.
So how old are you here?
19.
Good.
Yeah. And their mother was incredibly abusive. She had been, this is a story. Anyway.
Strategy. Give us a taste.
Here. It's not that I'm scared of the actual situation, but I'm scared of the feelings and not feeling safe. It's okay to feel fear, and it's okay to feel sadness, and not to feel safe, because the feelings are I'm just telling myself it's okay to feel it, and that I'm most afraid of the feelings, not the physical situation, as unpleasant as the physical situation was. I said, usually when I'm sad or hopeless or scared, I still feel safe. I found these safe places and have even that safe place inside myself. I think I got that at Rachel's. I needed a safe place, and the only place that felt safe, besides for the park or Walgreens, maybe was inside myself. I would create a place and create a peace that did not exist outside of me and my environment that I had found to go to when I needed it the most. And even to surround me when things were, quote unquote, okay, which generally it wasn't okay. This place was a place of strength and knowledge and of wisdom. It was my ammunition against the challenges of every minute of the day. I'm basically just talking about the fact that I knew that the people who I was allowing to mistreat me were wrong. And that knowledge allowed me to separate the personalization of the abuse to a degree, and to go, it fucking sucks, physically, mentally. Yeah.
So at that time, you had the intelligence to say that the abusers were wrong, so you were using moral judgment and resentment to create a distance, even at such a young age.
Yeah.
But that's very powerful. That's a traumatic, powerful experience that you spent a lot of time, energy, and attention to create this complex strategy, this game-playing strategy. Now as an adult, if you don't have anyone to play with it, that part is trying to continue living. That part is looking for new relationships to act out this highly strategic, brilliant strategy. So then you try to take on the world, save the world.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, I have a habit of doing that.
Very brilliant. So let's see if he has anything else. But also look at how he's memorizing stuff. But
it's not available to everyone who is in, let's say, these difficult situations. So that when you read the books or meet the people who have done these things, survived it, you're basically in awe of how their body enabled them to function under those situations. If we start to say that we treat people who have an appeasement issue by telling them to be assertive, we might be missing the dynamics of the relationship. In
this point, if we teach set boundaries and be assertive, you're overlooking the brilliance of the appeasement.
Of the relationship and of the history of relationships.
And if it's a lifelong history of relationships, this is a part of them. If you just say, just be assertive, you're telling them to throw away a giant part of themselves.
The client has gone through. And we may be missing the valiant attempt that the client's nervous system has enabled them to navigate in this very complex world. Because appeasement, for many, if they don't appease, there's injury on the other side of the equation. If they don't appease, there's injury on the other side of the equation.
Now that's partially true, but it's also him projecting a victim narrative onto the person. And that's also maybe unmet pain. You hide in the role of brilliant fawn self to avoid thinking about the real danger of not playing the game or being yourself. So that part continues living on, and then now Richard Branson is fixated on hypocrisy. Pierre XO is fixated on societal unfairness or stuff. So this leftover brilliant pawn self conned yourself to be
authentic self. Shrunken, invisible, hidden. Authentic self. Shrunken, invisible, hidden. Authentic self. Shrunken, invisible, hidden. Haha. The joke is
and then
on
you get hooked on the game.
You didn't eat me. You ate the decoy.
Pawn self
I am safe back here. Haha.
is your
The joke
brilliance.
is on you because you didn't eat me. You ate the decoy. I am safe back here. Haha.
That's also part of transactional love. You only know love through enmeshment and transaction. Heavy pitch.
Offering yourself up as a sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's a loving sacrifice.
Yeah, but you did it growing up. I mean, you actually had to do it. I mean, these people fed you and bought you clothes and gave you a house and a roof and a bedroom, your own bedroom. I mean, you felt like you had owed them.
Well, that's a narrative that you had to do to explain to yourself, because you're What if you're giving that narrative, Debbie, because you're judging yourself for strategizing backwards?
Right, because I couldn't acknowledge that they didn't have the wherewithal to be parents.
Well, no, that's what a lot of the therapy models say. But what if it's the opposite? What if you wanted to con yourself that you're a victim? That you had no other choice? Because the goal is to con them. But then you also con yourself.
Con myself, right. I con them and I con myself, right.
Con yourself that you're a victim, that you have to fight passively. You have to fix backwardly. You have to prevent, because to fully own it and act it out, you have to believe the character.
Well, because we have to justify why we're taking up space.
Explain.
Well, that's what it's about. I mean, it's like, look at what Debbie said, look at what we're doing for you. It's like, but I didn't ask to come here, and you're responsible for doing this for me. But now I feel guilty because I'm taking up space. That's my codependent.
You feel guilty.
Because I'm taking up space, because I'm not allowed to take up space.
Small. Be quiet.
Is that true? That's what we all say.
No, but that's the gaslighting. I bought that.
Yeah, so that's what they tried to con you, or you might have conned you.
That's what they conned me, and I believed it.
You just wanted to avoid pain, or you wanted to not get stomped on.
Right.
Or maybe you had judgment that you had to hide from sharing as a kid. Let's say that you're really clever. Just this thought experiment. So let's say you're a kid, you're really clever. You didn't agree that you were taking up space. You didn't agree that you were guilty. Your intuition, your inner self said, I matter. You were still connected to that.
Yeah.
But in order to not get stomped on, you had to pretend and join their shared fantasy.
Right.
Yeah.
The old model is blaming the victim, your shared fantasy. Let's flip it. It's worth exploring. Let's say you're the intelligent one. You're the intuitive inner child. You actively chose the role of parentification. You weren't a victim.
Right.
But in order to act it out properly, you had to con yourself to believe you were helpless.
Well, and even to have the arrogance to think that I was better than them in some way.
Steve, this is exactly what I've been throwing around this week. This is exactly my
This was his
journey.
dreams, see?
Yep. Because what I did, that fawn self at the front of the cave is me being helpless and pathetic, because that's the narrative that my mother wanted so that she could rescue me all the time, and that's how I got love. So my roadmap of love is for me to be this victim, collapsed, blah, 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 whatever, and that is a complete con. Because at the back of the cave is the real self, which I'm pulling out, and it's the complete opposite of that. So then the whole map of what love is becomes based on that crack baby, because everyone knows what the crack baby is. So that's the new journey, and I think this is exactly spot on.
Now, see, if you decided to do this at age 5 or age 2 or age whatever, some young age, you don't have these intellectual models. It's actually easy to create a fallen self from just pure emotion. But we can't put ourselves back at that 5-year-old range because it's just all pure emotion. So you got pure terror, you got pure danger, and then you can shapeshift into pure fawn.
As a 5-year-old, you'll think you'll die unless you do
Yes,
that.
but it's just in the moment. You don't really care as a 5-year-old. As an adult, we can project the death and we build it up as giant trauma. As a 5-year-old, it is terror, but since they held back feeling their feelings, expressing it, that's why it's an emotional flashback flood now. It's just a backlog of unfelt feelings. That's the terror we have. But if we try to fix a childhood by seeing ourselves as victim, that's another way of avoiding the flood of emotions. It's another way to con ourselves, which is the same thing we've been doing the whole life since childhood, conning others and conning ourselves to act out the fawn self, to act out this brilliant strategy. And even this strategy of rescuing the child, we're treating the crack baby as someone that needs to be rescued.
No,
you're right.
No, that's not a rescue. No.
What if it's not? Yeah, if we're rescuing, we're still top down.
Yep.
The fawn has conned itself to think that it's in control.
No, the crack baby's fine back there.
The crack baby is your intuition. The crack baby is connected to source. The crack baby doesn't need to be saved.
But could we talk about the crack baby for a second?
Okay. Question, or I can do the video?
Let's do the video. I'm very confused.
Yes, because we've referred to it, but I have it. Where is it? STS. 2 minutes.
Think of it this way. Under conditions of no escape and perpetual ongoing abuse, I shrink and shrink and dissociate and dissociate. I'm going to invisibilize myself.
Now, this is a narrative of being a victim. This is not a narrative of being strategic. So you can frame it the other way. You're shrinking invisible, and you're in a safe cave. And you can con other people with your fawn self. But we are projecting the narrative that the crack baby is helpless, but it could be the opposite.
I'm going to shrink back and shrink back and shrink back. And then I'm going to go not just into my cave, but into a crack in the cave at the very, very back. And that's now my authentic self. Shrunken, invisible, and hidden.
Now, shrunken we think is bad, but if you can shrink to source energy, that's actually getting close to source. That's getting close to God. That's actually more powerful in a small point than a giant point.
It's not shrinking in a physical sense.
Yes.
That's why
but the narrative is we're looking down at the
important.
Crack baby. Yeah. See? Yeah. A neocon's inner self is a giant crack baby. It's not this tiny thing. The crack baby, your inner child, is powerful. That's why we don't want to let it cry out, because it's also powerfully pained. It's powerfully sad. It's powerfully revengeful. There's a lot of power in the crack baby.
And that needs the love. That's where the love is, in there, not at the out the front.
Yeah, pure force, love, sure.
Yeah, so your false self cannot love the narcissist.
No.
That was also
False
one of
self can
Brandon's
only
recent
play the
videos.
brilliant game. It's been programmed to be strategic. That's the only thing the false self knows.
And kept away from the real world. That's part one. Part two is I make a decoy,
False self, decoy.
a straw man, so that the predator can eat. But I leave that at the mouth of the cave as my sacrifice. This is my fawning response. I give you this so that you don't eat me. This is where I fawn. So I've given you a doll or a decoy to consume, and then the predator walks away satiated. They have dominated you. They have abused you. They've proven their superiority to you, and they walk away full, proud, arrogant. Haha, I showed you. But actually, secretly, the codependent knows, haha, the joke is on you because you didn't eat me. You ate the decoy. I am safe back here. But over time, the more you get used to living like this, I think it becomes addictive, because
this is another addiction. It becomes addictive, this game.
There are advantages to all of this that we rewire to. Like, less is expected of you. Other predators in the environment leave you alone because you're not a threat. Other people don't expect as much of you. You don't expect as much of yourself. The tribe, culture, society stops expecting much of you. And you end up kind of a funny, bumbling idiot. That's the decoy. That's your pretend self. I'm not even worth, don't hit me, master. I'm not even.
Now, this
But
is
Richard
an argument.
turns up like that when he does his silly voices.
Yes.
That's exactly how he turns up.
I'm not even worth.
But he's saying this is a bad thing. He gets tons of supply, and his YouTube channel gets watches because he's able to do this fawn self.
Your attention, I'm such a bumbling buffoon.
So he's making an argument that you get so used to giving up responsibility, blah, 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 blah. I could flip it, and I'm going to argue that you just con yourself, that's all. You're in the crack, and then you were really living through your fawn self. You were living through your strategy. And you were doing it so well, and you were proud of yourself that you convinced yourself
Join the club,
that
kid.
you're helpless. Because you own the character. You fully acted out that you're helpless and all this stuff. And through repetition, your body gets conned.
Oh yeah, I'm so fucking resentful.
That's the doorway. So the resentment is, you piss off a codependent when they're resentful. They get powerful.
That's true.
So the fawn self that's all weak and whatnot, when they get triggered by betrayal, resentment, hypocrisy, they go ballistic. There's tons of power that suddenly gets unleashed. It's not very well directed, but it's tons of power a codependent has.
Right.
But that's also the blind spot.
Blind spot, yeah.
The crack baby can see it, but the fawning at the front of the cave can't.
Yeah, because the fawn self is compelled
because
to
you know-
self-sacrifice.
Right, so you know the crack baby knows.
Well, no, I would say it's not the fawn self or crack baby. It's your physical body. So if your fawn self is 24/7, that's what you're acting out. or 22/7, 22 out of 24 hours, you're acting out FAWN.
Right.
Then you forget your crack baby because your body is embodying, ritualizing, acting out constant FAWN. And whenever you act out and have resentment, you tamp it down, you judge yourself. The rest of the support group shuts you down, so you never act out physically your inner child. That's why Debbie is able to stand up and do
something.
That integrated her inner child into her body, and she did it in the public, against the lawyer, right? So that created and acted out. So now her body remembers her inner child. Where a codependent would just act out without having practice in this group. Then they would judge themselves for acting out, and then revert back to repeating patterns of fawn self.
Because by doing it long enough, you make a mind map. That's the way. So that's the addiction. That's the mind map. You always do it that way. So there's not really that much consideration of a crack baby that it even exists. It's not a concept. It's like, you know, this is the life is seen from that little hole. That's all there is.
Well, this is sort of, so this was a BPD pointer.
The world is the self. The world is the self. The world is the self.
So borderline is tricky because they own you and the whole world as themselves. But if you con yourself through your brilliant fawn self, you fully own the world as yourself, but you con yourself as a helpless victim. You con yourself as a people pleaser. You con yourself as needing to be needed. Your body got conned, so you just have to start acting out more from your inner child self and neutralized. Rescued. You've summoned yourself without summoning it. Because you get two codependents, and that's partially, I think Jeff's inspired the resentment thing is because he's dealing with an ex, or his girlfriend at the time, that was resentment on resentment. And it was just pure force on pure force. Because resentment is codependent superpower. They just judge the world. So if you could own it as just assertiveness, or not assertiveness, own it as cleverness, own it as brilliance, own it as a duplicitous trickery energy. And that's what I get critiqued in this meeting, or even at the in-person meeting. I'm too much of a trickster.
How are you supposed to own it if you chose it?
Say more.
If I chose the victimhood, hypothetically speaking, then
You
why
played
the
the
fuck
role.
would I?
You chose that as a strategy to survive. That was your game piece, yes. And it worked. You're not dead now, right? You might want to be, but you made it to whatever. Now you can just say no to hot 20-year-olds, so yeah.
I prefer to be alive right now.
Yeah. So your question of what?
I'm just really angry.
That's what I'm trying to trigger. Turn your betrayal and resentment into anger, and recognize that anger is power. Don't judge anger as being conflict averse, that it's going to trigger a caregiver attacking you, because now you're an adult. Your caregivers aren't there to judge your anger.
What I don't see I'm very confused.
This is where you take control of your life. You use that anger to have agency.
That's the thing, though, that there's no you to take control. So the way I would reframe it a little bit is that it's like when you're 3, I talk about myself, you're 3 or 4, and things happen that are unsafe. And so some kids fight, and some kids, they don't want to go through the whole trauma. So when I look back, I didn't feel that traumatized. It wasn't that bad. So strategically, I would become the dancing doll. Now, and it really worked well. So it was in your words, like a brilliant strategy to get through that as a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old. And there's no victimhood at that time. There's no poor me, because that's the strategy to play out. But then you get in your teenage years, then you're still doing the same way. But now you get into your 20s and 30s and you're doing it the same way now, because you are looking out there and managing those people. You can't look here to manage what is here. So now the trauma is starting. Now from that frame, and once you're aware, then you look back at the child and you feel like a victim. But during the child, I didn't feel like a victim. Like my memory is not of a victim.
Yes.
So it's
from the child, you're in this space.
Yeah.
Now it's just playing with words right now. Now it's just playing with words right now. Now it's just playing with words.
You see the power or the joy she's having in shutting down Allison?
Now it's just playing with words right now.
She picked that up at a young age. She didn't.
So it seems like to me, look, if I looked at it from the outside, it's like a combination of brilliance and misadventure, not knowing that this brilliance is going to bite you in the ass later, but you don't know the map when you're 4 years old. Like the same
but you're not thinking, you don't have that long-term projection at 4, but you have pure emotional energy. You have pure instinct. You have pure intuition. You can fully own imagination. You have pure shared fantasy that you can just dive into at that age.
And what's occurring to me as we are connecting on this is that there's resentment and anger, but that for me is leading to the doorway of humility, to say it is like this. This is how, what would you expect for a 3-year-old to do? That's what they would do. So this is actually a part of
You're still talking like the 3-year-old is someone that's separate than you. The 3-year-old is just you. All of this mental talk of the 3-year-old's a separate something you rescue, all that stuff. All that framing is nonsense.
Because when you're 3 years old, no, it's not deep. Because when you're 3 years old, you don't have the. When you're 3 years old, you don't have the map.
So you don't need the map.
But then you're gonna be massacred.
So you don't have to. That's what happened today at the in-person meeting. That's what I was breaking down. You know, it made sense to me why I hate the story, because I grew up in a country of con men and women. So when I hear someone spinning a story, it triggers me. But I've used my fake model is to suppress that. Like I can see right through what you're saying. I know you're lying, but I suppress it. But then I get enraged later. And when I actually fall for the thing that I saw, which I've been seeing since I was a kid. So I agree with Beef there. Like there's no separation, because I used to think the same way too. Like, oh, there's a separation between child self and, you know, but when I met that child self was no child at all. I thought it was even me, but it's not even me, it's larger. I built it and I've been crafting it and adding parts to it that has completely warped out of what my likeness is. That's why I would feel the resentment and hold down like the anger. I found out today that's where a lot of the anger is stalled. Like my inability to speak up. And I think we talked about it, Deef, where I was telling you that I I thought I figured out like, oh, how to not suppress my real true feelings, but I still am operating on a fake model, like the false character that I created. And today's meeting really brought that to light, to the front, when I kept hearing a story. But another thing that I think was annoying was watching people interrupt when the person is starting to reach the core.
Get
People will
close.
jump in and interrupt that process by adding a
Because
story.
that's the codependent's brilliance. They have to keep the con alive just for them and everybody else. That's how grandiose the codependent is at manipulating everybody in the environment.
Right. So when Nihama said, you know, it's just like last time when she said she had a gut, like it felt like a cannonball. What, you know, what happened then was we tried to save her from that cannonball feeling, you know, and of course I was curious. So in my curiosity, I'm not paying attention to what she was saying. So I ignored it and kept going for the cannonball because maybe that's my model, but her model could be different. So sometimes like when someone is like, oh, they just reached a realization, maybe that silence in between is where the new map is. But we knock them off the atlas completely by adding our own fearful, you know, like, no, don't get there. That's scary. From my experience, I've been there and it's scary, so don't go there. But what if this person can go there? Maybe you can, but they can't. So that was what, you know, for me, usually I get excited when someone is there, like, oh, you're about to reach the core. And then where the, I guess, disappointment comes in is where people interrupt. No, you're not feeling that. You know, okay, sorry, go ahead.
There's the Marianne Williamson quote, which probably isn't even hers, that our greatest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. And what if that's the truth? Instead of worrying about fear, we're actually afraid that if we fully let go, we fully allow our true self and we act out, we're terrified of our power, our ability to destroy, our ability to shape the world.
I totally agree 100% with that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too. That was my dream stuff with goes back to your triple loop again, to that third box, which is what are we actually dealing with? You know, what is the map, rather than this stuff that the false, the stuff at the front of the cave is dealing with. That, yeah, the thinking and then the identity. I think this is the gateway to that.
I wrote down some questions. Oh, hold on. Okay, now I'm back. Hey guys, video on. So I wrote down some questions after the meeting, like just some thoughts, like kind of pre-processing before the actual processing. So I'm gonna bite Nyama's style when she read her journal. But these are just ideas I put down after each of these meetings. So after the in-person meeting, I found out that I discovered that I have a strong fear of negative emotions. And I feel shame, guilt, and resentment. And I feel them in my gut, my throat, sometimes in my head. I also wrote down some questions that came up, which is, what am I afraid of? Why can't I speak out? When was this seed planted? And who am I trying to rescue? You know, so that's the beginning for me. Like, just start from there, from what I learned about myself today, you know.
Hmm. So what do we do with that? Who are you trying to rescue?
Who are
Guess
you trying to rescue?
I guess I'm trying to rescue myself. So then that instinct kicks in to rescue others. But it's a fantasy. It's not a reality because this person doesn't need rescuing. And they definitely don't need my rescuing at that moment. That's their situation.
Well, rescuing is a reframe is a positive reframe. Can we make it more realistic or neutral? Or maybe more brilliant?
It's a nice way of saying control.
Fixing.
Yes, so it's control.
Mm.
So what kind of control are you trying to do when you rescue?
Bring someone to safety.
Control your own
No,
feelings.
that's a positive framing. What's the drop the
Controlling.
Is it the
Controlling
appease-
is really what you're doing.
you're
when you're
controlling.
You're trying to regulate your feelings by controlling somebody else. If you control them properly enough, your feelings will be regulated.
Mm.
You're using
What
them
if-
as a pawn for your own emotional
You're using them as a pawn, but
regulation.
you're using them as a pawn to regulate yourself.
appeasing.
You're appeasing the other person, but the purpose. What if the purpose is different? So let's
It's to make
get
you feel better, safer. It's to make you feel safe.
No, that's positive framing. Fuck that
Okay, sorry.
bullshit.
I'm really worked up.
Nothing
right
positive,
now.
Holly. Nothing.
My nervous system is really high right now. I'm really worked up right now. My nervous system is really high right now. I'm really worked
I'm
up right now.
triggered.
My nervous system is really high
Righteous
right
indignation.
So it's really high, but she has a judgment saying that's bad.
She was
Why is it
triggered and she
bad?
didn't want to be.
Yeah,
Because
but why
she
is
thinks
it
she
bad?
can live
That's the thing. It's what meaning you give
Why
it.
is it bad?
because
to have
that's
your
not
nervous system?
reality.
No,
Oh.
it's actually if your nervous system is
It is
triggered, you're
reality.
more real
You're living.
than real.
living.
Yes, you're
Real
living.
is- yeah.
You're
'Cause you
feeling
can't make
alive
yourself
if your
the
nervous
enemy.
system is.
Yes.
But
Yes. You
she's
achieve success.
that's that misadventure that in her map, being high is a bad thing.
It's threatening
It's
the
scary.
con game. It's threatening the shell game of victim, helpless, keeping all the pieces in order because
It's
she's still stuck in
manipulative.
childhood. She's still stuck in caregivers control all the resources. But now you have a job, you have your own resources. You're not under the threat of the caregivers anymore. And you've forgotten how to control your high nervous system. So it's more so she doesn't know how to regulate this. You can't ride this out.
now. I'm really worked up right now. My nervous system is really high
She
right now.
couldn't-
I'm really worked up right now.
She couldn't
Now-
tolerate someone.
Isn't
putting
this
them-
what people want when they go on a roller coaster? Isn't this what people want when they do bungee jumping? Isn't what they want in a highly sexual interaction? They want to be worked up?
Pleasure, but not the pain. You don't want the pain.
No, if you're in roller coaster, you want both. You're
She
having,
was-
if you're in the moment
That's
having
the
like
addiction.
wild, crazy sex, you want both. You aren't
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, that's too painful. I'm not going to go against the wall. I'm not going."
She was watching a drama play out, and then she didn't like that the drama played out, and blamed
Oh, no,
you
I
for
Stop
letting
going
it play
into
out.
story.
Okay.
This is not an example about story. This is an example of how she's framing feeling alive as a negative.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think there's this is something I've been working on this week, the separation of feelings from story. That's an artificial separation. You cannot, because the feelings have arisen from a faulty story. So to totally ignore the story it doesn't, it's not
Okay.
something
let's
that
go back
works,
here.
that I can.
The pain makes him wake up. The pain makes him wake up. The pain makes
Danger.
him wake up. The pain.
So narcissist, his argument, narcissist finds a borderline to get mortification because the pain wakes up the narcissist.
How does the borderline cause the pain? How does that happen?
They're borderline. What?
Because they're
they're
freaking
programmed
out?
to do
What
it as
is
part of the DNA.
Go make some new borderline friends and find out.
I think I have, but I don't know. I don't know.
Just give Kay a
No.
call, she'll help you out.
Just
But I
get
think
closer to them.
Yes.
And
Chaos.
it'll happen.
Chaos. Just complete chaos.
So in that
Yes.
way,
They
the pain
trigger
does
you.
wake you
Okay.
up, but the reason you have pain is because your story didn't play out. So it is still connected to the story or your map.
Your
No,
inner
you have pain
child
because it
lives
sucks.
without story.
No,
You
no,
have
no,
pain
no.
because
You're
it
mixing
hurts.
things up.
It has
You're
nothing to do
mixing
with the
things up.
story.
Huh?
You
It
have
just
pain
hurts.
because it hurts and it matters. Something hurts
Right.
that matters.
Right.
And something that hurts that matters more than your story. Pain gets below the story. Pain gets to the
What does that
essence.
have to do with why a narcissist picks a borderline?
Because they are fast enough that the narcissist gaslighting can't control the borderline. So they're
So
equal
it's
opponents.
the
But
challenge.
they play on each other.
Yeah.
They
And they're
like the
constantly
challenge.
Yeah, they constantly keep each other
They like
in
the challenge, but they
hypervigilant.
also want mortification. Their inner child wants to
Go
be
and watch
integrated.
my favourite film, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and you'll get your answer.
Yeah, that was just on.
George and Martha. It's exactly that's their story.
They just constantly poke and trigger each other.
Martha, more by George. But, you know, I mean, there's a little bit of poetic license, but that's it.
They insult each other. They
You
ridicule.
guys still
They
want to
destroy.
fall into the story because
Here's what I wrote. I knew that exterior factors cannot completely define me, and therefore I was and am stronger in an unhealthy and invalidating environment.
that sounds pretty certain.
That's basically saying, hey, the story ain't shit.
That's a strong, solid position, right?
Yeah, because
There's no confusion in there. There's no doubt. There's no fearfulness, is there?
But what you've written is your story, you see. So that will give you comfort. But if it was the case later on that they could define you, then because your story didn't pan out, that creates the pain, that goes into the body. So you can't remove the story from the body.
No, the pain was being treated not like a human. That was the pain, not being treated with dignity. That was the pain.
But
dehumanizing.
Dehumanizing. But if you
that could have been any situation. That could have been any story in which I was being dehumanized.
Yeah.
So
but
this
if you
particulars.
if some implicitly your story is or your worldview is that dehumanizing is bad, then it hurts. But if in your story, if dehumanizing is
No,
normal,
Pankaj, no. There is no situation in which dehumanization is okay, feels okay. It doesn't exist.
Yeah. How can you say that?
No. Now
How can
it's
you
just
say
good
that?
words right now. No.
So we're talking from adult language where we're saying that we're falling into the story and then we have meta level to talk down at ourselves. At the inner child level, at the dehumanizing level, that's below story. That's before story. That's visceral. That's pure. It's more pure. It's closer to your true self. And the more you try to frame it as a story level, that's your fawn self freaking out. Because the fawn self needs to be clever. The fawn self needs to be duplicitous. The fawn self needs to be...
When you say it's
needs
closer
to
to
trick.
real self, how can we say that?
Because I'm talking from that part.
Right.
But when I look at it, say for me, the inner child, that's just a little wee piece of code which is not that sophisticated.
Yes, so we're still gaming on how to integrate your inner child because your meta self is complex and layered that it's constantly
No, but I think
killing
apart from
access to your inner child.
No, I don't.
We see
that
it. Our inner children see it, but you have a lot of layers to
no,
block it.
For me, even when I was a kid, I can remember there was this other something like an intelligence which could see all the things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But, and that's not the inner child. It could see that too. So, but that intelligence or that awareness, consciousness or whatever, it just wasn't aware of certain stuff. That's how I see it for my life. It was just not aware of stuff that this is how the world works. So it can look at the inner child and says, yeah, it's a baby. It doesn't grieve though. That's the weird thing. This intelligence doesn't grieve.
Okay.
But if we keep it at the inner child, FAWN self level, it is to get above that and to have a look at it from there to upgrade the map. And I think what I was getting at when Nekama, you said about the resentment and the anger, I think what this last week and what Brad, thank you so much, a couple of fortnights ago, that was pretty special for me.
Point.
That anger and resentment
Move it.
Doorway. Shush.
Move it.
Anger and resentment opens a doorway of humility that the story doesn't have to be my way. Now, if you really feel that, then so much of the pain just drops.
Because nobody makes you feel anything.
Pain is not the enemy.
No, I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it is. But
who cares about the pain dropping?
Because then
Then
you're kidding me. the stuff that you're fighting, say when Anakin is saying angry man, angry child, all that would drop if you had you see the humility. My story doesn't have to work out. It is a narcissistic approach in me that says my story should work out. My brother should be interested in me. But when you have humility, he has a right not to be. That's okay.
See, this is why you need mortification to turn off this multi-layered, multi-parts, and then whatever is left.
It's the mortification.
Whatever is left when you're mortified, that's you. Right now, you got too many fragmented parts all over the place.
That's not how I'm framing it.
Yes.
The mortification is that my story doesn't. You have the humility. It doesn't have to come out. It does. It's not. It doesn't have to be like that. You got your own story. You got your own story.
It's just a matter of time. Everyone faces mortification. Welcome, Kurt.
Hey, Kurt.
Hey. Now it's just putting the words right now. I'm really worked up right now. My nervous system is really high right now.
You're alive.
And I just wonder, where is the healing on this? Really attack right now. Feeling really attack right now. Just feeling really attacked right now. And I just wonder right now. And I just wonder. 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 And I just
wonder. That was a judgment. And I just judge
wondering
you.
Can create space from emotions, and you just play at different planes of awareness. It's not totally wrong, but it's not present moment, life or death, living, excitement. That's sort of this.
I'm really worked up right now. My nervous system is really high right now. I'm really worked up right now.
That's good.
My nervous system is really
That's what
really
you want.
high right now. I'm really worked up right now. My nervous system is really high right now. I'm really.
Well, because she had to hold herself back from doing something.
Then Brenda
she
told her
wanted
to fuck
do.
off.
She.
Brenda went, go away.
Ooh.
No, that
She
was
at the
Michelle.
end of the video, eh?
Did I miss another outburst person?
No, that was a
See
while
this
ago.
one, Crystal.
You were there, Crystal. You were there freaking out. Go back.
I can remember Michelle.
Oh.
Aha.
Yeah, I might have hung up already. I bailed.
I think you got 2 for the price of 1 that week.
Yes, we did, and I bailed.
Yeah, that was,
Oh, you bailed.
That was a two-for meeting. We had the big one, and then we had the follow-on. Yeah.
Yeah.
You missed the follow-on. Okay, we're gonna close up this session. It was a thought experiment. We just flipped all the current stories. Maybe it works, maybe not. Who knows? So we'll end with this.
What we're trying to do is mask pain. We're trying to mask vulnerability. What we're trying to do is mask pain. We're trying to mask vulnerability. What we're trying to do is mask pain. We're trying to mask vulnerability. What we're trying to...
The pain makes him wake up. The pain makes him wake up.
I'm really worked up right now. My nervous system is really high right now.